Women of Culture 365 presents G.L.O.W, a greater level of wellness. With your co-host, Mea Allman, founder of Women of Culture 365 and G.L.O.W, a certified life, health, and nutrition coach. Sophia Green, producer and host of the Sophie G Radio Show, bringing you words of wisdom. Don Hewitt, certified holistic health coach on how to treat the whole body. And Lady Q, founder of Sisters of Faith and Pink 360, an evangelist and certified life purpose coach, bringing you spiritual advice. Join us as we go Facebook Live every third Tuesday at 7 p.m. to talk about the mind, body, and soul, a conversation you do not want to miss. Please bring your questions as you discover the power of your glow.
Hi, I'm Coach Mea, your host. Thank you all for tuning in to G.L.O.W 365, which equals greater level of wellness. August is National Happens Month. In this episode, our topic is why happiness is healthy for the mind, body, and soul. But before we get started, allow me to introduce one of my co-hosts who's going to share an overview of the previous G.L.O.W show we had on grave disease. Sophie, take it away.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be back here in another month with a beautiful set of people. Last month was actually Graves Awareness Month, and we actually featured, and we had a really good show. So if you missed it, please go ahead and catch up on it. Make sure you see it on the link, right here, where you can always watch other shows if you missed out. But Graves Disease Month, we had a special guest, or actually one of our sisters, Lady Dawn. She shared her journey with us, and really deep insights, personal message, personal journey as to her life, living experience and coping mechanism with Graves' disease. We learned that there's so many of us who go undiagnosed, misunderstood, and suffer because we've been misdiagnosed for long, unnecessary times because we were not understood as to what was really going on in our bodies. And one thing we learned on the last episode was that, you got to pay attention. If something is not right, something is not right. We may feel as if you're feeling dehydrated, delusional. People have been diagnosed with being delusional, being anemic, when deep down inside, when you really stop and get a right doctor who can understand, talk your language, understand what's going on with you, to get a proper diagnosis, to find out that sometimes it happens to be, unfortunately, Graves' disease. So one thing we took away from last month's show is that if something is wrong, especially people of color, go and don't stop checking until you really, really feel somebody who's comfortable and will listen to you. Sometimes being anemic, having low blood pressure, having low blood count, feeling lethargic is not just feeling lethargic. And today we have a real good show lined up for you again. It is a special month, and we got special hosts and guests on today's show. And as our sister said before, Lady Mea, you don't want to miss this one. So call your friends, tell your friends to log on right now if they've not already logged on to Happiness Happens Month right here that we're celebrating right here. Take it away, Sister Mea. Tell us what's going on, who we have lined up. And I'm excited.
Thank you, Sophie. And of course, Sophie is the host of the Sophie G Radio Show. And yes, I'm excited. We got to bring in the rest of our team, the G.L.O.W team. It's my pleasure to introduce, both of these individuals. They are life coaches, they're self-empowerment educators. Coach Dawn Hewitt, she's a certified holistic health coach. Hey, Dawn.
Hi, guys.
And there's Lady Q. She is a certified life purpose coach and the founder of Sisters of Faith and Pink 360. Hey, G.L.O.W team.
Hey.
Hey.
Missed you guys. Missed you
And
guys.
I got to say, welcome back
Same
to Lady
here.
Q. You have been gone a minute. I know you've been doing a lot of stuff, studying and doing a couple of things at Three Mask and stuff. But we are so happy to have you back, part of the team, and this is a special month, because Happiness Happens Day was actually my granddaughter and Sophie's birthday,
Hey.
which they spread, both of them spread a lot of joy to me anyway.
Yay. Happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
happy birthday.
Month.
Yes,
All right now.
Yes.
yes.
Yes,
Exactly.
yes, it spread through a whole entire month,
Of course.
and KOOGE, which is our technical director and founder of Kweliworks, brought this to my attention that August was Happiness Happens Month, and this would be a good conversation for your team to talk about. And I was like, yeah, this is be nice, So I did my research and stuff, and I found a website about the Society of Happy People. So I reached out to, the founder, and I was excited that she was willing to be a guest on our show. So, we've got a great show lined up. Let me start by introducing our featured guest for this evening. Our first guest is Pamela Gail Johnson, founder of the Society of Happy People and the author of Practical Happens: 4 Principles to Improve Your Life, from Maryland. Hi, Pamela. How are you?
Hi, I am so happy to be here. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
If you ever can,
And
please just let me know.
Great. And our second guest is friend to the show, Katherine Maruri-Love. She is the host of Living the Life You Love, Cat and Cooch Go to the Movies, and she's a self-empowerment educator, chief marketing officer for Kweliworks, coming to you from Boca, Florida. Hey, Kat.
Hey,
Hi.
Kat.
And our
Hey.
third special guest is Leonard Burg. He's a soul therapist and the dean of faculty for Kweliworks, and the author of Dis-Ease is the Cure, coming to you from Harlem, New York. Namaste, Lenny.
Namaste. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we hear you.
Great.
So before we get started, I just want to share a little insight about our first guest. Again, Pamela, she started the Society of Happy People, formerly known as the Secret Society of Happy People, in 1998, to provide a missing voice for those who are happy and wanted to express it without having other people rain on their parade. The society provided her with a unique opportunity to interact with thousands of happy and not so happy people in effort to be happy most of the time. Pamela has helped people to understand, expand, and rethink happiness mindset at a height of the self-help movement. Now, the Society of Happy People has 3 holidays they celebrate each year. One is Happiness Happens Day, founded August 8th, 1999. Again, my grandmother and Sophie G's birthday. And Happiness Happens Month, founded in August 2000. And Happiness Week, founded the 3rd week in January 2001. Pam, I am so excited to have you here today to share with us, where are all the happy people and how have you inspired and motivated thousands of people to become happy? Please share.
Well, we started the society really with just one goal, and it was just to get people to talk more about being happy if they happen to be happy. We've never ever suggested that you should pretend to be happy if you're not, but I think it sort of depends on what made you unhappy as to how long you want to hang on to the unhappiness, but there's legitimate unhappiness and things that lower our vibe or make us feel less good and not quite as happy as we'd like. So we don't want you to ignore those things, but we also want you to really make an effort to notice all of the little things that happen every single day that make you happier or make you feel good, that make you, that raise your vibe. There's a lot of ways you can look at it, because sometimes happiness isn't always this big energetic form of happiness. Sometimes happiness is being content. So our original tagline was actually, are you happier than you admit you are? And again, what are you talking about? Are you talking enough about your happiness? If half your life is happy, shouldn't half your life get happy? Shouldn't half your conversations also be talking about the things that are going right in your life and the things that you feel good and love? And oftentimes that doesn't happen. So throughout the years, we've done that a lot of different ways, including the 3 holidays. We just focus a lot about happiness those times. But we also identified 31 types of happiness. So we kind of are trying to broaden the definition of happiness. And, happiness is bigger than you think if you really look at all the different emotions that can make you feel a little bit happier.
Awesome. Thank you. Now, since you started the society, how important is it now compared to back in 1998? And were people welcoming to share being happy with you?
I think the biggest difference in the past 20 years is 20 years ago, we were so at the height of the self-help movement. So it was kind of the era of Jerry Springer, Oprah, talk radio, Dr. Laura. I mean, there was just a lot of different places in which there was a lot of focus on maybe what had gone wrong in your life. And so I think what's changed is the positive psychology movement also started releasing its research about 20 years ago. So there is a bigger focus on being happy and on happiness in a I think probably a healthier way. But I also think it's sometimes in an unrealistic way that I think they were calling it toxic positivity. I think I read an article in the LA Times about that recently. So we've almost kind of moved to one place that we're just sort of expecting people to be happy all the time. And sometimes, like I said, legitimate things happen that make happiness maybe not as happy. So I think of happiness like practical happiness, which I know we'll discuss later, but I think happiness has to be practical. There has to be a very realistic element to having realistic happiness. And that includes on the emotions you equate to happiness. And really just, it's super simple. It gets down to what feels good. So if you've been running around all day and your feet are killing you, just putting your feet up on your, coffee table or on an ottoman, you might feel good and you feel a little bit better because your feet aren't running around all day. And that moment, that might be your happiness.
Awesome. Great. Now you're the author of an upcoming book that's going to launch next year, January 2022, called Practical Happiness, 4 Principles to Improve Your Life. What inspired you to write this book on happiness? And can you share a little bit about what the 4 principles are? And also, where can we purchase this book when it comes out?
Well, 20 years ago, I was doing an interview because the society was 20 years old, and a reporter said, "What have you learned about happiness in the past 20 years?" And it just really got me thinking. And I went back and I reread a bunch of stuff that I'd written, and we had always had a very similar message. So I put them into 4 principles. And the 4 principles are: happiness is personal. And most of us will say, "Oh, well, that of course is obvious." But we don't always think of it that way. Like if something makes us super happy, sometimes we're trying to drag people into doing what it is that, like I love yoga, but if you love running, yoga might not be your happy, exercise. And so if you're trying to drag me to go run, or I'm trying to drag you to come to yoga, we probably just have a different idea of happiness, and that's okay. The second one is happiness zappers are manageable, and we divide those into 5 categories. So we have unhappiness, stress, chaos, fear, and annoyances. And so we have to manage each of those categories when we're not feeling, as happy as we would like to feel. And the third principle is happiness changes as you change. And I think a lot of people find unhappiness when they sometimes look back like, well, 10 years ago I did, I was staying out all night and dancing on the table, so to speak. And I was doing it every Friday, but now I'm 35, I have kids, I've got responsibilities, and I go out and, because it's my friend's birthday or whatever, I go out for my guys' night out or my girls' night out, and I'm not getting the same happiness from it that I got before. We kind of get frustrated with that, but our happiness does change as we change. And sometimes that can even be based on the moment. If you spend all day kind of locked in doing work, dinner comes around and you might not want to eat dinner alone. You might want to be hanging out with people and being more social. If you've been super people busy, as I call it, all day long, you might be like, yeah, I just want to sit here and eat my bowl of cereal and catch up on one of my favorite, whatever binge series I'm watching. So our happiness really does change over the decades, but can also just change over the moments. And then our final principle is happiness is bigger than you think. And it's really based on those 31 types of happiness. So it's about broadening that definition that you have of happiness. And when you do, you most likely end up with discovering that there's, a lot more happiness in your life than you think.
Oh, very nice. Thank you so much for sharing that little insight. And we look forward to reading that book on your upcoming book in January.
Yes, it will be fun. In the meantime, so if you're dealing with some happiness zappers, if you go to sohp.com/gift, we have 30 ways to rejuvenate your soul. So sometimes, everybody, even mostly happy people, have to take that time to do self-care and rejuvenate themselves.
That is great. The other day I was reading this quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson, and it said, every minute you are angry, you lose 60 seconds of happiness. I mean, wow. One of the things that I find that so many of us spend so many time of being unhappy, and we struggle to shift the mindset and release the happiness within us. This brings us to our first roundtable discussion on how happiness is healthy for the mind. And I want to start with Lenny.
Yes.
Now, we can all agree.
Say again?
We can all agree that happiness is a choice, and it depends on how we choose to be happy. Lenny, from your observation, why do you think that many of us struggle to find happiness from a superficial standpoint rather than seeking it consciously within us?
And that's because we don't know who we are. We think that we're this costume that we wear. We think that we're solely this gender, this race, this nationality, this our bank book, our crazies, our looks, but that's only the dual part of our being. Who we really are is a divine spirit. And if we are not in touch with that spirit, then much of what we call happiness is superficial.
Mm-hmm. Now, I also want to touch on, there's 3 levels to happiness, which I call the 3 Ps: pleasure, passion, and purpose. But for some might get confused when it reflects on happiness. Can you explain a little how happiness relates to 3 Ps?
Okay, well, pleasure, you said pleasure, passion, and what was the third?
Passion.
Purpose. Okay.
Passion.
That has to do again with being in touch with who we really are. Meaning, why did the Lord create us? Why have we been put on this earth? If it's our spirit that gives us life, Or what are we doing that is furthering the purpose and reason the Spirit even is giving us life? And if we're not in touch with that, we're not going to be fulfilled. We may be passionate about a lot of things. Our purpose may solely be materially oriented, but that does not give us peace. I'm sure Hitler was happy when he killed 6,000 Jews, but actually, he was not at peace and he was still
Hmm.
suffering,
Hmm.
even though people try to hide that suffering.
Hmm. That's
Mm,
deep. That's
very
deep.
deep.
That's deep.
Next
You know,
question,
Lenny.
and this is to Kat. Sure, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. It's okay. Go ahead. Go
Go,
ahead.
Sophie.
No, I was saying,
Yana,
it's always so enlightening to listen to Lenny talk, because when Lenny talks, he always hits everything like right on the head. Um,
mhm,
Listening earlier, we heard, Pam said something, Pamela said something about we can choose or not to or choose what or what not to, when it comes to being toxic and having a toxic environment. And we had a conversation in one of the shows earlier with Lenny on it, and one of the things he mentioned is that we need to identify what gives us on dis-ease, right, Lenny? And
Yes,
how,
yes.
if we can identify that, um, and if something doesn't feel right within us, and sometimes it happens to be with the people who are around us in our environment that we let into our space, that can create that dis-ease that can cause us to be unhappy. And if we can, and sometimes it happens to be with the people that we allow to come into our space. And it's about controlling our environment to try to find our happiness. Go right
Well,
ahead, sister.
part of the problem there is that whether it is being happy or sad or resentful or any emotion, very often people have a tendency to say, "You make me happy,"
Mm-hmm.
or "Make me happy."
Mm-hmm.
We look
mhm,
at external things to
Mm-hmm.
give us happiness, but happiness is here today and gone tomorrow. We may be happy one minute and sad the next. We
Mm-hmm.
have to own our feelings and emotions, number one. And number two, it's probably important to distinguish between happiness and peace. One of the
Mm.
definitions of happy is, of course, contentment, which is a little bit closer to peace, uh, than the kind of happy that has to do with pleasure. Because we can be finding much pleasure, and while we're involved in happy hour at the bar, we're happy. But when we get home, there's the letdown.
Mm.
yeah, the alcohol wears off. We're back to reality.
True that.
Mhm,
Mhm.
yep. Um, I was also reading this quote by Yana Benson. Once mentioned that so many of us invest a fortune into making ourselves look good to the world, but yet inside we are falling apart. It's time to invest on the inside. Kat, you are a self-empowerment educator. What are your thoughts on that statement?
Well, first of all, I want to say I love Ayanla. She's my hero. She's the one that says, you got to do the work. And by that, she says, how do you do the work? You're holding on to harboring, you're holding on to self limiting beliefs, you're hiding your insecurities. And if you're not really, like Lenny says, getting to know yourself, then you actually stay in a state of mind that is unhappy, because we all have trauma that we need to release so that we could see the glass half full instead of half empty. So, what I love to do is I like to focus on my spiritual core, and I also love self help. I was somebody that grew up and guiltily indulge in self help. Why? Because as I was getting to know myself, my shortcomings, and just kind of process through all of my own stuff, self-help books were the first guide that I had. And then after that was looking for mentors that were able to help me. But it's all about, like Lenny said, getting to know yourself and knowing what's going on inside, so that then you can actually pull yourself through the valleys and into the hills.
I like that.
I'd like
Yes,
to say
thank you so
too that often, people who come to me for therapy, I've come to learn that one of the things that people most fear that makes them timid about going to therapy is they think that uh, they're going to have to change, or that the therapist is going to try to fix them. And what we stress to people is that no, you're okay. You have to be yourself. If you're being yourself, your essence, if there's a change that's needed, it knows how to guide you towards making that change. So it's the ego a lot of times that no matter how perfect you think you got it, the ego wants to fix you and make you perfect in its way. And that has nothing to do with the perfection that we associate with the great, spiritual and mystical beings that have been on the planet, who mainly talk about love and selfless service. And I just want to just say that one of the things they say is that selfless service to humanity, as you talked about yourself, Kat, this is a great source of peace when you selflessly give service to humanity.
Absolutely.
I know, Kat, for the little time that, I've known you, boy, you have grown. And I enjoy talking to you. We have our conversations. You just inspire me in so many ways, and, oftentimes, too many of us, we focus on the negative and stay in denial because we don't want to hear the truth that affects our mindset. Pamela, what can people do to become more happier, at work, at home, and especially during post-pandemic?
Well, I do think one of the things that's happened during the pandemic is we've all taken some time and we're reevaluating so many things about our lives. So we're reevaluating our jobs, we're reevaluating our relationships with our friends, even. I think the New Yorker did a big essay on that. We're reevaluating stuff, so it kind of falls into that third principle that happiness changes as you change. So I think you have to take that extra time right now to get to know yourself and really figure out what some of your happiness is. One of my readers or Society Connects wrote me one time and said, one of the things the pandemic has shown me is that I was doing so many things that didn't make me happy because I was just being so busy all of the time. And so I think there's going to be a cultural transition that's going to take place over time. And I think the real key to that is just, again, owning who you are and honoring who you are. And then you move to that next tier about just overall general happiness. And I think it's, again, a lot of times it's about really expanding your definition. Like we would say peaceful or being at peace or being content. Those are both two types of our 31 types of happiness. Just like having fun is one of the 31 types of happiness, but they're very different types of happiness. If I'm at a county fair on a Ferris wheel and excited about that, or at happy hour and excited about that, that's a different type of happiness than when I come home and I just have my, quiet centering time or have my spiritual happiness, whatever that connection to God is for me, or the universe, if that's an important part of my happiness. Sometimes happiness is relief. So like you're at work and you finally finished that last to-do checklist or that last big project that was annoying with so many of your, different departments and coworkers or whatever the case is, or the bazillion Zoom calls you've been on this year. Just the relief of getting that off your plate and the satisfaction that it's done. Those are two types of happiness. So I think sometimes noting those moments that we just feel good is actually sort of what makes us happy. But I really do suspect in the next few years, you're just, because the pandemic, COVID's not going away. We're learning how to deal with it, but there will be new variants, new whatever. So we're going to, again, be managing this, and it is changing it's going to change our culture, just like, say, 9/11 did. Before 9/11, you would have never thought, I got to put my shoes in a bin to get on an airplane. Like, that would have just never been in your thought process. But now we do it, we think nothing of it. So I can't tell you what all the cultural changes will be. I do know in the workplace, I think a hybrid work environment is here to stay for most companies. That's just going to be what it is. Some employees like that, some employees don't. So organizations are going to have to figure out, how do we balance the needs of our workforce? And I think our workforce is also going to be trying to figure out what works for them and what doesn't work for them. So like I said, I think we're just in a big transition, and what's the right word for it? People don't like change. And so it creates fear, which is one of our happiness zappers. And so the question will be, how do we manage that happiness zapper so it's not taking away, it's taking away the least amount of happiness that it can. It's still honoring it, because I think if we don't honor when we're not feeling our happiest, it just kind of lingers longer. We stick it like in a box in our mental closet, but the feeling and the emotions, they're still there. So the best way to navigate them is again, when we actually acknowledge them, because then when they kind of pop in our head, that situation pops, or that person pushes our buttons or adds stress, we can at least say, oh, this person's my button pusher at the office. Okay, take a deep breath, count to 10. Think before I speak instead of just react, and try to figure out ways to sort of manage that chaos so that we're not adding to it. Or if it's that annoyance, I always call annoyance is that thing of maybe somebody wasn't as polite to you as you think they should have been, and the question is, will you remember it a year from now? And if your answer is no, then just kind of let it go now. Put it in your God box, put it wherever you need to put it, but kind of let it go. Because if it's not going to be there a year from now,
Put it in the God box.
It's just not worth losing the happiness over at all. And we all do it. We all have those moments, because usually what we're doing is we're projecting some of our other situations, in there. And then we do have legitimate unhappiness. If somebody died, or if you lost your pet, or maybe you lost your job that you just loved, you lost something you really loved. Unhappiness usually deals when we have to grieve. And I'm in a lot of positive type groups, and I'll see people who are in a grieving space for whatever reason. Maybe they had a health change, so they're having to change a lifestyle piece for themselves. So we grieve a lot of different things. We can have a falling out with our best friend. We can grieve a lot of things, but grief sort of leads the dance, and we sort of have to, you can't just say, oh, well, this happened and it's been a week, so now I want to be happy and I'm going to be happy. It doesn't always work that way. I mean, it can, depending on the situation. Like if you lost your job and you got a new one within a week, you probably don't think too much about the one you lost. But if it takes you a couple of months to find that new job, there's this whole grieving process that goes with that. So again, it's just sort of knowing where we are. And like I said, it'll be interesting to see where we are in 12, 18 months post-pandemic, as far as I think people are, like I said, really reevaluating parts of their life, and we're going to see how that changes our society.
Well, I'm glad that you brought that up, because, part of the problem I feel that people experience is being happy or sane in an insane world. We live at a time where psychosociopathology is mushrooming. We live at a time where there's climate change, where there's hurricanes and forest and forest fires and floods and typhoons, and it seems that autocracy is rampant around the globe, and here even in our country. And we find that the United States of America leads the developed world in the having the worst percentage of infant mortality, cancer, heart disease, diabetes, and all of these things are actually revealing that a lot of the happy face that people put on is a mask. So what we find in soul therapy is that the first step in tapping into that true contentment and peace, at least those two of the 31, right, is to first you have to be conscious of how you're really feeling. Because if you're faking it and you're not really conscious, I don't mean indulge what you're feeling necessarily, but if you're suppressing it, it's pressing you. And that's one of the things that leads to all of these diseases, because it affects your immune system. So unfortunately, we live in a world where a lot of people who talk about positive thinking, which we all can agree is necessary and important, but thinking positive doesn't mean, or being conscious of feelings that you have that aren't so positive is not hurtful. It's actually helpful. As long as you're not suppressing it, you're not indulging it.
Mm-hmm.
And I completely agree. And that's why even when I started the society 20 plus years ago, I was working actually in the addiction field, in the self-help field. And we've never ever said, pretend you're happy if you're not. Because again, I think that's not good on so many levels. And even in the 4 principles, we say happiness zappers are manageable, because I think you can't indulge it. Like you said, you have to figure out what your outlet is. If you're concerned about global warming, if that's one of your passion projects, then beyond being concerned, what actions are you doing to help with that? And that can be anything from political action to just making sure you recycle for yourself. I mean, it can be a huge gamut of pieces. And it's important to, if something's really pulling at you and it pulls at your heartstrings, what can you do to be part of the solution versus just saying, well, I noticed this is wrong and I'm just going to sit here and let it eat up my happiness. Go be proactive, because it can fall in those categories like satisfaction. Sometimes things move me. I've done marches. I did the women's marches, and it made me at least feel like I was showing up, and I got involved in some other issues that way. There was a lot of satisfaction in that made me happy, because I was also unhappy about something else that was a bigger part of that. And I think that it's so important to, again, create a plan, if you will. I call them ZAP maps, but create a Zapper management action plan, if you will, to again, manage those things that do cause you unhappiness, because then that way you're being proactive about it and probably actually creating a byproduct of something you can feel good about, and it makes you feel a little bit better because you're feeling like you're part of the solution.
Well, sometimes people, when they're acknowledging how they're feeling as opposed to suppressing it, yes, what they see the need for or should is, okay, what am I going to do about it? Okay. But the problem I find is that, and I find this a lot with mind science and positive thinking, there are trillions of things or goals that we can set and we can achieve them. The thing is, are the goals that we're setting really bringing us happiness? Really bringing us peace? Where do these goals come from? Are they coming just from ego and that kind of thing, or coming from some kind of more inner divine insight? So I think that what's also important is the way in which we are cultivating that divine part of our being, so that when we meditate, we don't just meditate to go into Never Never Land. We meditate, which focuses at the third eye, in order to receive some instruction and some guidance, so that what we do will really lead to true growth, true happiness, true contentment.
Well, and that's also where happiness, I think, is personal. So I think some people are maybe, I'm a spiritual person, so that's part of my happiness, but it might not be part of everybody's happiness. And so I think that's where, again, happiness is personal, and it gets a little tricky because it's personal and it's going to change as you change. And so it's just kind of meeting people where they are, which obviously you're doing in therapy by helping them, even identify maybe what they're, that's causing them pain, and, creating those feelings of not feeling so good.
Yeah. I'm curious. I know,
Awesome.
Lady Q, I know that you've been out there, and you also, in line of speaking spiritual and motivational and all that. I know you interact a lot with a lot of people on a regular basis as well. And what's your take from a spiritual standpoint in regards to how do you encourage, and what have you been seeing out there in regards to people trying to get back to the norm and trying to get back to feeling alive? And what have you been faced with, and how have you been coaching or inspiring people?
Well, Sophie, because of the pandemic and everything that we're dealing with, a lot of when we deal with the mental health, a lot of people are dealing with issues. And so it's really tapping into those things that people can do at home. For instance, I'm an artist. So I create jewelry, I paint, I write, I'm a poet as well. So when I talk to people, I ask them, what is it that you can do at home? Tapping into your inner self, because we can easily get stuck in this space of what's going on in the world. We can get stuck in this space where we're constantly watching the news, we're reading the news, we're on social media, and we see everything that's wrong, everything that's going wrong. And those things, to me, listening to Pamela is a happiness zapper. So get away, take a break from those things, and pay attention to the things that you like. And sometimes, in talking to people, I have found that people are learning more about themselves, the things that they actually like to do, the things that make them happy. But sometimes we have to sit still, because now that people are not always going. It's allowing people to sit still. So the biggest thing that I talk to people about is really sitting still and finding out what you like. Whether you go on the internet and you start researching things, or something you thought about years ago, but now I'm going to do it. Do it now while you have the time to do it. We don't know how long we'll be in this process, but tapping into those things.
Definitely. And, I think during this pandemic has really slowed a lot of us down to where we're enjoying more me time. I know some of us that are working, they enjoy being at home and not being in the office itself. But, as we're going to this next roundtable discussion, as a health advocate, studies have shown that, when we're happy, it also helps, lower the risk of cardiovascular disease. It lowers our blood pressure. It enables us to sleep better, improves our diet, our digestion, and also allow us to maintain normal body weight through exercises and reduces stress. John is going to share how happiness or unhappiness affects the body.
Sure.
John?
So Lenny, I'll direct my first question. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I'll direct my first question to you. With the importance of serotonin when it comes on to happiness and feelings of joy, can you recommend any foods or herbs that can help the body to release more serotonin?
to the specifics of serotonin, but I can say that in general, the less sugar you eat, the more happy and peaceful you're going to be. A lot of people, for instance, with diabetes, we say psychosomatically, they're longing for the joy of life that's missing. So they get that through some temporary happiness and temporary satisfaction by eating sweets, you see? So limiting sugar is one of the main things. Eating more live foods with enzymes, eating more of your vegetables in season, limiting the amount of animal products that you eat. You can live to be 100 and still not be a vegetarian, but you want to be more mindful about the kinds of animal products that you do eat and how much. I think that also fasting from time to time, intermediate fasting for 24 hours helps the body to detox. I think that the point about the effect of foods and emotions on the body is that some foods promote an excess amount of cortisol and other hormones, and these hormones damage, threaten the immune system. I'd also say that in this time of COVID, especially, we need more foods with zinc, with vitamin C, and vitamin D3. We need sunshine. That's food. Sleep is food. Something that many people don't talk about is that what is it in the food and in the atmosphere that keeps us healthy? And it's called chi. There's chi. It's sort of the life. It's how the life force outside of us translates into the life force in our body. There's chi in the sun. There's chi in the air. There's chi in the water. There's chi in the food. And the kinds of exercises and movements we do helps to circulate the chi in the body. So I think that eating more live, natural, whole foods, less processed food, that's what most of us, we know already. What we don't know a lot of is some of those exercises. I tell you what, even something like double dutch, any exercise where you're swinging your arms helps to strengthen your heart. Believe it or not. I learned this from a Qigong master, Dr. George Love. And think about the things that you do where you're swinging your arms. You might be jumping rope, you might be dancing, you might be playing golf, but you're moving, you see? So I think we need to just enlarge our notion of food to include the food that we get spiritually, the food that we get through being in the sun. All your green plants give off oxygen. But during COVID, what we're told, stay inside. When you need sun for vitamin D3, you need air and oxygen because most of COVID dwells down in your respiratory system, okay? And just about everyone who has COVID is seriously deficient of vitamin D3, okay? So, those are just some things I would say, because, I feel that people sometimes feels like they need to be a chemist in order to know how to eat, And I think go down to your vegetable stand and just eat the fruits and vegetables in season. Make sure you wash them off and get some exercise and proper rest.
Beautiful, beautiful tips. Thank you, Lenny. So Kat, this next one is for you. Oh, you're welcome. So with yourself being a self-empowerment speaker, do you find that living in your purpose for any individual can raise your level of happiness? And, as a part of self-care, living in your purpose, can be a part of, taking care of yourself and bringing about happiness?
Wow. So I lost my father. It's
Kat?
going to be what? Can you hear me?
I can.
Yes, yes.
Oh, okay. I lost my father. It's going to be 1 year ago. And
Yes.
if it wasn't for living
Yes.
on, if it was not for living on purpose, it would have really knocked me down because my father was my best friend. He was my rock. He was
Mm.
everything to me. And I chose to, yes, I grieved him, but I also planned to take that energy, that grief, and give it to the world as like transmute it into something that can make a difference. And
Mm.
so my show, Living the Life You Love, is all about interviewing people who are passionate about what they do, their contribution to the world, and their self-sustain. So that's what I'm all about. Living a passion, purposeful life and highlighting people that do that no matter what their circumstances is. And that makes a difference. It makes so much of a difference for me. And I believe that it will make a difference for other people in that realm of happiness.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. And for you, Pam, on your website, I found this so beautiful. You said your bio mentions that you love simple things such as yoga and cooking, and you mentioned yoga already. Would you encourage those seeking more happiness in their lives to also practice similar self-care methods?
Well, I think self-care is kind of a foundation for happiness because you can't give anyone what you don't have. So, if you now we do know scientifically speaking that just smiling, even if it's a fake smile, releases feel good endorphins. So if you're kind of having one of those like, oh, I'm not so happy, go fake smile for a few minutes and it'll make you feel a little bit better. It takes about 5 minutes to kick in. But I do think our happiness again is personal and depending upon the moment. So cooking doesn't always make me happy, but it makes me happy a lot of times when I'm doing it. So I think you have to figure out what those things are for you. We probably all have 5-10 things that when we do them, 90% of the time, they're going to make us feel good. And that's the key, feel good. Are we feeling a little better than we felt the moments before? So maybe it's taking a walk outside. I'm a big fan of movement. It's like I said, sometimes it's taking a walk or just breathing in fresh air. I believe in a lot of breath work. I think that's this great way to energize and oxygenate us. So, but I do think we all need that list of those things that we know we can go do. Sometimes it's a nap because I don't think we get enough sleep as a society. So it really is a lot of simple stuff, but sometimes we need to have that big, hairy, audacious goal. Sometimes we need to be like, by golly, I'm running a marathon because I've always wanted to run a marathon. I want the marathon medal and I'm going to do that. I mean, or I want to do it. So at least I take the steps to do it. So sometimes we do need, we need those things too for happiness. So it's just, it's very dependent on where we are and what's going on in our life, I think, at that moment. But again, I do think we should always have the go-to list.
Yeah,
that makes perfect sense. Like for our self-care, I was just going to quickly say for the individual self-care, they should always know what they like and pour themselves into those things like Lady Q was saying about her crafts. Yeah.
And also, I really agree with the fact that it's personal, because too often we allow our happiness or contentment to be dependent upon approval from other people or what other people are doing. And I've also learned that something that was very deep and profound for me was that, and I've learned this through the process of therapy and my own spiritual work, that I can be happy. I don't need anything to make me happy. I can be happy. And then I'm more likely to get involved in things that sustain that happiness. This is my personal, my personal journey, and it takes a lot of pressure off of a person when you realize that you can be loving, you can be happy, you can be contented before you have to have something to make you feel that way.
Beautiful.
Awesome. Thank you,
Very
Lenny.
true. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And for our final roundtable discussion, Coach Lady Q is going to discuss how happiness is healthy for our soul. Lady Q?
Well, when I think about happiness, I think about the scripture that says a joyful heart is good medicine. So understanding that in the spiritual walk that we have, whatever it is that we tap into, that takes us to that place spiritually, for us to be in that place of happiness and looking at it that it's good for us, and not just good for us, it's medicine. Imagine if you are always having issues and you're depressed about them, it brings on diseases, not just depression, anxiety, and all of these other things. But being in that place of happiness, it's good for our heart, and it's good for our mind, it's good for our spirit. It's just like medicine. So when you encounter someone and you're laughing, laughter is also a good medicine. And it takes us to that place. It can almost be euphoric, so to speak, when we're in that place where we're laughing and we're happy, and thinking about things that make us happy can take us out of a certain space and allowing us to be in that happy space again. It's something that I often use with my youngest son, that when he's going through something, think about what makes you happy. Think about the thought, and it pulls him out of that place, but it also keeps us in alignment spiritually. It allows us to have the open door that we can grow in. So my first question is for Lenny. And Lenny, I want to ask you, how has spirituality helped on your journey to happiness?
Well, thank you for asking. I want to make it clear that some of the things that I've talked about require a tool to enable a person to implement those things. Back in the early 80s in Harlem, we had support groups that dealt with people with AIDS and cancer and multiple sclerosis. And we thought that there was a profile of those who survived and thrived the best. And it had 3 dimensions. The most important dimension of it, and by the way, the people who had these serious diseases, unhappiness was a whole large part of it, and other kinds of resentments and things like that. So we found that the people who survived and thrived the best, the most important thing they did was they deepened their spiritual connection. It didn't matter what particular religious tradition, or it doesn't have to be a religion, but they deepened their connection with that part of their being that's eternal. Okay. The second thing we saw in such people was that they said they're going to look upon the challenges in life, which seem to make a lot of people unhappy. They decided, I'm going to look at these challenges and diseases too, not as death sentences, but as opportunities for me to live life to the fullest. Then the third thing they did was they incorporated holistic living, a more holistic lifestyle, as a permanent thing as opposed to as a temporary measure. Now, specifically, there are 3 things in spirituality that has helped me on my journey to contentment and happiness and peace. Number 1 is meditation. Number 2 is spiritual study and discourse, and spending more time around people who are concerned about, what's my purpose in life? Who am I? Why am I here? And how can I develop spiritually? How can I realize my divinity? Okay. And then the third thing is selfless service, which has been mentioned. I find that when you engage in selfless service, when you cultivate your spirit, And when you hang out more with people who are doing the same, then it's much easier to be happy and do things that support and sustain your contentment and happiness.
I definitely agree with you, and it's something that you mentioned about when people are sick and how they handle it. You know, I had a grandmother that was 89 years old, and she passed a week ago, and we just buried her on Thursday. But what I will say, through the process when she was diagnosed with cancer 5 years ago, she would tell us like, I don't know what cancer is, and I don't have that. So looking at her in that process, initially the doctor said, okay, well, just we're going to send her home, put her into hospice, and it's just a matter of time. That was 5 years ago. So I believe because she didn't allow something like cancer to be a dark cloud over her,
Amen.
that she was given the longevity of those 5 years because she laughed and she danced and she enjoyed life. And she was truly a praying woman and a woman of faith. And so she tapped into those things. So me watching her all the way through this process, for me, it was amazing because she always smiled. And even when the nurses would come in, she always smiled, but cancer was not ever a conversation for her. She didn't even allow us to have that conversation because her focus was living life,
All
not
right.
allowing disease to kill her, but to live life. And so, in looking at that, you know, I would say from my own eyes watching it, it definitely gave her the 5 years that she had because doctors didn't even give her time. They said we're gonna make her comfortable. And so it was just amazing watching that process. You know, sometimes we hear about it, but to sit and see it and watch it play out was amazing. And she was so in peace through the process. You know, and oftentimes people allow issues and diseases to pull them down. But you know, I think most importantly, tapping into God because that was her source that helped her to keep having the faith to continue to push through, even in her bad day. Because even in her rough day, she still smiled. So you know, listening to you talk about that aspect, you know, it to be able to see it happen was amazing.
Well, I'm
You
glad you mentioned that because all your mystics throughout mankind have said that one of their main purposes in engaging people on the spiritual path is to reduce their suffering. Because let's face it, a lot of the unhappiness in life has to do with the challenges and suffering that people experience. So if you put a little bit more time into cultivating your spirit, it definitely can lead to less suffering in spite of some of the things that we have to persevere. Some people are born with certain diseases. Some people are born in poverty. Some people are born in dire straits. But the more you cultivate your spirit, you get some divine assistance in persevering and reducing the suffering and make you more likely to tap into whatever contentment or happiness is available.
right. Well, Lenny, I appreciate your response. And now I'm going to move on to Kat. Um, Kat, what are some affirmation techniques that someone could use to find their happiness from within?
Oh my goodness. It's gonna seem very hokey, but I have a gratitude attitude journal.
Love
And
it.
I just write the things that I'm grateful about. It doesn't have to be fancy. It could just be I'm grateful that the breakfast that my significant other made for me was absolutely amazing. Um, I'm so happy that I went to the beach today. I'm so happy that I got a chance to go outside and spend time with some friends. The happiness that that brings me, I can't even describe it. I was so surprised when I started reviewing my journal when I was in a bad mood. And I was like, wow, I actually feel pretty ungrateful sometimes, you know? So I go back to it and I reference it all the time. And sometimes other than these affirmations that I write in my book, God has a way of putting people on my path and giving me that smack in the face, like, you have no problems. There's people out there suffering,
Mhm.
and when those people come to my path and I have a chance to like bring myself back to a state of gratitude, that automatically makes me happy, you
Wow.
know, and just being there for other people and holding that space for them instead of loathing and feeling sorry for myself.
Right. I think if we focus more on gratitude, right? Because oftentimes we want to focus on what's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
That's easy. It's so easy to do, to focus on this is wrong and that's wrong, and I
Or
got
what we
people
don't have.
killed. Right. In that situation, and yes, what we don't have, that if we took the time to actually sit down and pay attention to the small things and realize throughout the course of the day that in writing these things down in this journal and then looking back, realizing that I have more things to be happy for than I should be upset about or sitting in depression. So I think, Pat, that the journal is absolutely amazing. It's an
Yes, ma'am.
absolute amazing
Love
tool
it.
to use. You know, it's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah,
So
Love it.
I
awesome.
recommend it.
Yeah, you might have me doing a gratitude journal. I have never done one. I think I may need to do one. Not that, I think it just enhances. If you're already in this space of happiness or see things, a lot of times we see the big things that make us happy. We don't see the small things. So I think I might start doing the gratitude journal and see how it works.
The gratitude attitude.
Gratitude attitude.
Because
Yes,
sometimes we don't got the right
Like
attitude.
it.
But this
yeah,
is the right attitude.
Like it.
yes, definitely.
Yes.
Like it. Mia, I know that we're pretty much out of time, or we're cutting it really close. But I do have two questions, and this is for Pamela. Pamela, I want to know. I don't want to say thank you, everyone. Kat, for sharing what you just shared. Your personal story with your dad and all of that, and and as to sister up top there, our sister Lady Q and her grandma. This question is for you. I have two questions for you, Pamela. You started 20 years ago the Institute of Happy People. And I know for those who are familiar with your work and familiar with you in general, they know. But for those who are viewing right now for the first time, can you please, I know quickly, because I know we're running out of time, just let us know what inspired you to begin with in the first place 20 years ago, for you to decide to do this. And I also want you to please give us a little bit of a few of the 31 types of happiness that we can take from this.
Honestly, I was teaching self-empowerment workshops at the time, and again, it was kind of at that height of what I would kind of call the what's wrong self-help movement. And mental health has somewhat changed because of the positive psychology research that's come out, but it was focused a lot on what was wrong, what happened to you at whatever age and what was wrong, and you have to heal it. So I was kind of a mostly happy person, I think. And so sometimes people would just tell me I was in denial, that I was upset over stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I don't really think I am. Because if I'm upset, most people knew it. If I was really unhappy about something, I did not lack the ability to communicate that. But a lot of stuff I just didn't worry about. So that's when I kind of really started looking for that tribe of people who were mostly happy. So that sort of really was the inspiration. I thought it'd be a great essay when I was telling people about it, because I was kind of looking at doing an empowerment newsletter. But I was writing for Deepak Chopra's newsletter that was, print and mailed to you at the time. That's how newsletters were delivered. So my inspiration really, like I said, was a great essay idea. And when I was telling people about it, they're like, let me know when you started, I want to join. And then by the time I started it, we started in August 8th is when I got my first, like, I did not know who you were member. So that's why I considered that our birthday. Because, you know, I made my friends and family join. That November, in her Thanksgiving column, Ann Landers told people not to send out happy holiday newsletters. And that's obviously somewhat changed with our times because we don't send out as many holiday cards. But, you know, it's a holiday newsletter. You give your recap on your family because we didn't have Facebook where we had that going on every single day. So you kind of knew what was going on in your friends and family life. And we were so our small membership of about 40 people, some of them were calling me going, she's raining on people's parades and you need to tell her to quit it. And I'm like, okay, there's like 40 of us. We don't live in Chicago. And Lenders is in lots of papers. I'm like, ugh. But we did a press release. We got a lot of press from that. And again, and I got a lot of calls of people very upset about it. But I'm like, if, you know, reading a happy holiday newsletter makes you unhappy, there is not a happy holiday newsletter police that's going to fine you for not reading it. So throw it in the trash. Like, again, happiness is personal. Like, you don't have to read it, but why be mad that somebody shared some happy news with you? that's
I would
you know, like,
love to get that in the mail. I would love to get that in the mail because usually bills are in the mail. I would love to get a happiness newsletter. I'll be all over it.
And then we
of course,
we have tips for how to
and
write
can you give
how we got started, and then we grew from there. And you guys have been great. I've mentioned lots of the types of happiness. Gratitude is a type of happiness. But I know, and I would say on my worst day, blessed, which is a type of happiness. I have a blessed life on my worst day. But you know, the day I had to take my mother off of a ventilator, that was not a happy day. I was not feeling blessed. I probably wasn't feeling a lot of gratitude. But did I feel love because I had family around me? Extended family? Yes, I did. And that is the type of happiness. So there was still some happy moments going on in my worst day of my life. And that's where we really do encourage people, like, expand that definition. Like, maybe amused. I mean, I'm easily amused. I laugh at silly things all the time, which sometimes annoys people if they don't see what I'm laughing at. I'm like, I just saw this, whatever cat do something on the tree that you didn't even know because it's already gone. And I'm thinking it's funny. So I'm easily amused. So if I'm in a weird funk, I could probably take a walk around the block and I'll laugh at 2 or 3 things, even if I'm having a chaotic day. So we all have to figure out what those are. Relief, satisfaction. How many people get a lot of happiness when they feel valued? So maybe valued as a parent, maybe valued as a daughter, maybe valued as an employee or by one of your clients. These are, again, types of happiness that feed our soul. Obviously, there's things like joyful and there's spiritual, being spiritually connected. So I think what we feel happy-wise can really vary on our moments, but if we're really in tune with that, and we do actually have a happiness counter. We have an app, but we have one you can print that's on our website that has all 31 types. We have a happiness counter. Actually, you have the little poster on this graphic. There's a happiness counter that you can print off, and 31 can feel too big if you aren't thinking of happiness that way. So we even have a 5-day Raise Your Vibe challenge. So you're focusing just on one per day. If you've never tried to divide up your happiness and you just put in a big umbrella, I would say just pick one per day and make note of it. And sometimes it may not, like nostalgic happiness. You might not have as many nostalgic moments as you might amused moments, or moments you feel loved. It just sort of depends on kind of what's going on in your day. Or humor. Humor is a type of happiness. So how many times did you laugh? So during our first week of Happiness Happens month, we also overlapped with Hunt for Happiness week this year, and we did a different count every day. So one time it was like, count every time you see your favorite color, because color, again, is one of those things that makes us feel good when we see our favorite color. So just start counting that, and you're gonna figure out, you're like, wow, I actually have more happiness around me than I think, even if you have a lot of happiness zappers, because sometimes happiness zappers are bigger one day than other days. We're like, wow, my day was 85% happiness zappers, and we're looking for the 15% of happy, but they're still probably 15% happy. there. Some days you're going to have 85% happy. Maybe it's your wedding. Maybe it's, who knows? Maybe it's just the day you got to stay in your PJs and binge watch TV all day. But you're still going to probably have 10 or 15% of zappers. I mean, it still happens. Like we don't live in a monolith life of like, oh, I'm feeling the same emotion for 24 hours. And if we did, it'd probably be boring. So it's just this real, it's everywhere. So the goal is kind of like, I always tell people, if you're not happy with at least 50% of your life, you probably need, like my talk or my book or my whatever might not be your fixer if you're not happy, because you probably are going to need to make some hard choices. You're probably going to need to do that horrible change word that sends people into fear. And there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, if you notice it, that's a great thing, because you can go get the help of somebody like Leonard, like you could get help from somebody like you to help you make those changes so you're happy with hopefully at least 50% of your life, or get a life coach, or just do what you need to do. But if you are happy with 50% of it, it should be in your head, like at least knowing what that is so you have that balance, which is super
awesome.
Is a super key to your happiness mindset. And I talked too long, so I'm sorry.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate
I'm really loving this.
The initiative 20 years ago to start the society, even so that we could be having a conversation today right here. And we thank you, big brother there for who's behind the scenes for even, bringing it to our attention to begin with, right, Mea? So that you could do the research to know that this is even happening, so that we could have this moment this evening. I know we've been out of time, but Mea, there's so much wisdom here, so much good vibes, good attitude, good information, good counsel, that we're so grateful, and the rest of the world, I'm pretty sure, is going to be as well. This has been a beautiful moment right here. I really appreciate this platform.
Mm-hmm.
And thank y'all for having me on.
Thank you.
Much gratitude.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Before we close out, I would like us to just take a moment of silence to remember the families that we lost in Haiti this past Saturday due to the earthquake. Sophie, do you have just a quick words of wisdom, or we're just going to close out to?
Well, I think, what I've taken away from this, and I encourage everyone to remember, is that, with all the guests that we've been blessed to have on, Pamela, Kat, and we also have Lenny, and just the crew, the wisdom, the collaboration of beautifulness right here. I think what we need to remember from all of this is that what I've taken from all this is that it's important to try to make ourselves happy, because happiness comes from within. We can't try to find it outside. And the only way to find it outside is if we take time out to appreciate, be grateful, even if it means finding a journal and writing it in pen and paper, of the things that are around us. It may be a bird, it may be a song, it may be, as Pamela said, finding what brings you joy. If it is running, run. If it is yoga, do yoga. For me, I encourage people to listen to their favorite music, whatever makes you feel happy, that touches your soul. We know that smiling, laughter is important for minds, body, and soul. And they say that it is the muscle behind, the muscle that connects the eye to the cheek, to the lips, that crinkles. I think it's called the Duchenne smile. Once it hits your eyes and it hits your soul, it can transform an attitude that is actually contagious. So on this month, awareness of happiness, because it can happen, I want to say, just remember that it is about us to be grateful, appreciate life, take time out, as Lenny said, to breathe. Inhale, exhale, spend time with our Creator, superior spiritually, Jesus, whatever we want to call or acknowledge as being spiritual to us. Find a moment in each and every single day to appreciate the life we have, because we know it can be taken from us just like that.
Mm.
Make moments to make yourself happy, because you're the only person who can find it for you.
Hey,
Not my sister, not my neighbor,
come on.
not your ex, not your kids.
All right.
I appreciate you all. Just hold on to that. Jesus,
Thank you.
others, and yourself. Joy. That's how I find joy. Jesus, others, and yourself. Peace.
Amen.
Peace.
And Pamela, just before we go, can you just share where we can follow you on social media and also on your website?
Well, the website's SOHP, so for Society of Happy People.com. And if you go there, you'll find all our social media connects. But if you type in Happiness Happens Month, the group should show up, or Society of Happy People on Facebook, the group should show up. And I'm on Instagram and LinkedIn and Twitter. So there's links connecting you to all those outlets, or whatever your favorite of choice is, whatever your happiness of choice. But yeah, SOHP.com. And you can get the counter there. And then if you go to SOHP.com/gift, you can get the 30 ways to rejuvenate your soul, because some people, like that little lift.
Yes.
Oh, and you also had a special offer for our audience that is tuning in. Can you share real quick?
Yes, the offer.
Yes.
Yeah,
You had a special offer.
That's just for your audience right now. Just if they go to SOHP.com/gift, they can sign up and get the Rejuvenate Your Soul 30 ways to do that, because sometimes, it's August, it's hot. People sometimes are just needing a little boost of happiness in August. So again, it's just a way to rejuvenate your soul, which for a lot of people is the foundation of their happiness, where their soul lies.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to thank our G.L.O.W team, our special guest, Katherine Maruri-Love, Leonard Burg, Pamela Gail Johnson, and you, the viewers. I am Mea, coming to you from Ocoee, Florida. And remember, the key to being happy is knowing you have the power to choose what to accept and what to let go. Thank you all for tuning in. Until next time.